What are you gonna do with that bread? If you are rooting for Texas right now, you live in a fantasy world. In case you missed my last video on the subject, Texas took securing the southern border into their own hands, and they're doing so in a way that violates human rights, invites a military conflict with the federal government, and pushes idiotic civil war rhetoric. Setting death traps on the border isn't protecting the country. This is immigration, not another country invading us. You are an insane person if you think otherwise. Of course I think the US is mishandling immigration on the southern border, probably for different reasons than y'all, but I guarantee you that setting up illegal barriers that murder people is not going to fix the economy, and it's not going to improve your lives in any way. You want to know something that will ruin your life? Starting a civil war. That is a lose your life speedrun by being used as a pawn in a right-wing power grab. If another civil war breaks out, it's going to suck for you and for all civilians involved. I get that you'll have radicalized psychopaths who have been waiting their entire lives for something like this to happen, but this is not going to be like Call of Duty. It's going to be the Navy SEALs versus the Gravy SEALs. Get real, dude. I want to eat that. Look at that beef. I think it's safe to say that Joe Biden is officially not going to win 2024. First of all, he has a built-in problem of his voter base despising him. He turns his back on his campaign promises all the time by doing stuff such as spitting in the faces of rail workers, authorizing the environmentally devastating Willow Project, and dragging his feet on student loan forgiveness. He is also openly bolstering genocide, which has earned him the nickname Genocide Joe. Okay, now for the new stuff. With the situation going on in Texas and their open rebellion of the federal government, he has two options. Do nothing, which will not only further enrage his voter base and sabotage his re-election, but will also unravel all political order in the US, proving that red states can just ignore the Supreme Court and do whatever they want, which is a scary thought. The second option is to resurrect Dark Brandon and bring the hammer down, seize control of the border, and make an example out of Greg Abbott. This isn't great, it will come with all sorts of problems, and will definitely not get him re-elected, but if it comes to it, it's what he needs to do. Either way, he's cooked. If the Dems want any shot at keeping Trump out of office, they need to run someone else as soon as possible. I want to eat that. What are they cooking this time? Okay, so there's a live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender show in the works, but some information came out that's a little troubling. Executives have reportedly made the decision to remove Sokka's sexism from the show, and I'm only half on board. I'm all for removing how juvenile Sokka was with his sexism. His crazy, unambiguous misogyny might have worked for a 2000s Nickelodeon show, but I'd rather the live-action handle it with a little more nuance. But I think it's kind of important, and the original show ultimately handled his journey away from misogyny fairly well, and removing that growth is butchering his character. Even though the Southern Water Tribe was more progressive in comparison to the Northern Tribe, it's clear that there was still very rigid gender roles within the Water Nation as a whole. Sokka is displaying behavior that he learned from his world's hierarchies, and the viewer is supposed to feel conflicted with this. It gives his character layers, and it fits within the show's themes of redemption. If Sokka's just a really cool guy who's insusceptible to the traditions of the Water Tribes that some viewers might find icky, then that's just boring. Let characters be flawed, for God's sake. I want to eat that. Is that marshmallow cream? A lot of music artists on TikTok have just been screwed over. In case you missed it, a behemoth company called Universal Music Group has pulled sounds from TikTok that feature music from artists that their labels have signed, which muted about 2.5 million videos. Yes, sounds from artists like Taylor Swift and Drake have been removed from the app, but the real losers are small to medium-sized artists who rely on TikTok as a tool to promote their music. Regardless how you feel about TikTok, I'm looking at you, Reels and Shorts users, it has changed the entire landscape of how we discover media, and in many ways, the TikTok algorithm is much more friendly to smaller creators. If you have signed with one of these labels, people can no longer discover your music on TikTok, which sucks if your livelihood depends on that. The most obnoxious part about this is that both companies are saying, oh, we care about the little guys, we care about the artists, which is not true. If TikTok cared about their artists, they would actually pay them more, because artists receive pretty much nothing for their songs on TikTok. And if UMG cared about their artists, they would stop the predatory practices of their industry and give small artists decent contracts. They're worried about their wallets, not artists. That would give me a heart attack. What are they cooking this time? Right now, Canada is pushing policies that will put children in danger. I have said it before and I will say it again, having universal healthcare and less gun violence does not make Canada this progressive safe haven that some claim it to be. For example, a province of Canada called Alberta is proposing policies that match the depravity of US anti-trans policies. These policies include barring trans students from participating in sports categories that match their gender identity, even though there's not really that much compelling evidence that trans inclusivity in kids' sports is that big of an issue for cis students. Age requirements for gender-affirming care and surgeries are also on the table. Funny how nobody has a problem with either of those concepts when cis people get and use them. There's also a proposal to require parents' permission for teachers to use preferred pronouns and names. This is horrible because sometimes schools are the only gender-affirming support networks in students' lives, which if taken away will only lead to more abuse at home and more self-harm. Agendas like these are harmful for everyone and are not limited to the US, and acting like they are only trivializes them until they show up at your doorstep. I want to eat that. Nature in its glory. Taylor Swift does not like it when people hold her accountable for her gigantic carbon footprint. There's this teenage programmer who creates these bots that post private jet flights of political figures, celebrities, and tech billionaires onto Instagram and Twitter using public records. On paper, lots of Taylor Swift fans are progressive and care about the environment, yet Taylor Swift has the largest carbon footprint out of any celebrity because of how frequently she uses her private jet. Her carbon footprint is nearly 1,200 times that of the average person. I know that nerds like to defend celebrities' private jet use, but her average flight time was around 80 minutes, and her shortest flight in 2022 was about half an hour, which is not great. Elon Musk was in a similar situation with the flight tracker a while back, and here's a free piece of PR advice. Whatever Elon does, do the opposite. Like Musk, Taylor Swift threatened to sue the teenager for providing public flight records that anyone can access and successfully took down the Instagram account, which is not a good look. And nobody should be surprised about this or about her silence in regards to what's happening in Palestine. Taylor Swift is a billionaire and thus a bad person. I want to eat that. Poke that chicken. The gerontocracy has a chokehold on us. Joe Biden's cognitive decline is getting so bad that he will likely not be facing charges for withholding classified documents from his vice presidency under Obama as a private citizen because a special counsel appointed by the DOJ deemed him to be a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. And before anyone says it, Trump is on the same boat. He's often confused on stage, plus he won't shut up about how difficult the cognitive decline test he took during his presidency was. You can argue that the committee wasn't a real medical analysis or that the test was really hard, but let's be for real right now, neither have another 4 years in them. Those are your options for president. Two old men who think that you can't buy a home because you're too lazy to save up $500 for a down payment, working with senators who freeze during public addresses. And they don't want to change a thing. None of these politicians want to impose limitations on how long they're allowed to be in power. And this is the result, a political system run by wealthy elderly people who do not govern within the broad needs and interests of the average American. I want to eat that. What are they cooking this time? Israel is planning a ground invasion of Rafah, and it is going to be a catastrophe. This is Rafah. It is a district in the Gaza Strip along the border of Egypt, and it is also the entry point for life-saving humanitarian aid. It is also where evacuating citizens have been funneled to. Up to 1.4 million people are crammed and trapped in Rafah, which was originally home to about 280,000 people. Despite already routine bombardment, Rafah contains some of Gaza's now nearly non-existent resources necessary for life, such as hospitals and water systems. As you can imagine, after 126 days of escalated IDF operations since October 7th, the conditions in Rafah are already terrifying. But Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that the IDF plans to evacuate Rafah, again up to 1.4 million people, in order to launch a full-scale offensive. These people have nowhere to evacuate to, especially considering that anywhere else has significantly less resources and shelter from bombardment. This is disgusting. There is no possible world where something like this won't massively contribute towards the deaths of innocent men, women, and children. If you haven't yet, organize, protest, call representatives, donate what you can. Sharing social media posts is great, but please go beyond that. Free Palestine. Chocolate safe, that's a code I want to crack. You all should copy my content. I'm seeing a lot of new people using the I want to eat that formula where you duet an engaging video for audience retention, and people tag me and say, this person's copying woke Karen, and I say, good. You should copy me. Like, seriously, you should duet a video, drop your opinion, hot take, info dump, whatever, in the same way that I do, and tag me in that shit because I like to watch these videos. You don't even have to use my formula. I've been experimenting with a new formula, and those videos work just as well. I think the idea of a TikTok revolution of leftist shit posters who trick people into class consciousness, flooding the For You page, is fucking glorious. And even if you want to drop your non-political opinion, I promise that you will get really good views if you play around with the formula. Good luck out there, my Karen. Stay woke, raise some hell. I want to eat that.